What's up, everybody? Welcome to a weekend edition of House Divided here on Orange Bloods Live. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That is Chad Hastings. We're ready to go into the weekend, but not before we do a show talking Texas football, talking Texas recruiting, taking you into the weekend because we're committed to the craft. Do us a solid like, comment, subscribe to the page. Definitely subscribe and like, but we'll take your comments too. And if you want to jump into the Specs chat and chat it up, we'll take your super chats. We'll take your regular chats. We'll probably take more of your super chats than your regular chats, but we want to give you a chance and not defeat you before you even make the attempt. Mr. Hastings,
yes, sir.
Full weekend. I'm looking forward to. It's one of those unorthodox weekends in college athletics where there's stuff going on and everything basically but football.
Yeah, it really is. There's a lot of good stuff. Sweet 16 time in college basketball, I thought got off to a good start last night. I'm loving the chalk on the men's side. Really interested to see what happens on the women's side. Obviously, Texas still in that regard. Catch, we could have Texas Tech and Houston both get to San Antonio for a Final Four. You realize that? And they could meet in the championship game, if I'm remembering the bracket correctly.
It's on the table.
It is on the table. Texas Tech, congrats on a crazy win last night. As much as I don't root for either of those teams, Catch, it was entertaining as hell. And Texas Tech got it done in the end. That was fun. Obviously, another big baseball series coming up for Texas. Let's see if Texas can go handle business in a series nobody's really going to pay attention to. Because at Missouri isn't exactly like at Mississippi State, at LSU, at one of those venues, with all due respect to those Tigers. Let's see if Texas can go handle business, get a road series win there. But yeah, just a lot of stuff going on. And we're talking about one of my favorite things in the world today, Longhorns and Aggies fighting for stuff. So let's do it.
Or not fighting for stuff.
Yeah, that's not the part I want to. That's not the part I want to hear about. That's the part I want to hear about, the fighting part.
I think it's interesting that the Longhorns, the Longhorns are back in business of bringing prospects on campus this weekend. Mm-hmm. So they've got a big list. It's pretty star-studded, so it's on in the world of Texas football recruiting. As much as we talk about recruiting, we've certainly seen a number of other schools host big recruiting event after big recruiting event, and Texas has just kind of sat by, and I think we all understand that their approach is to wait a little bit. Okay. So they've waited, and now I think we're in a position where business picks up, but around the country, there's still a lot of activity. In fact, I think one of the things that I couldn't help but notice when putting together the weekend preview over at Orange Bloods, where we're previewing all of the people who are taking visits that are key Texas targets, but not to Texas this weekend, kind of everywhere but Texas, although we certainly have that covered as well. And A&M's got this big recruiting event. And I'm looking at the names, and, they've got 25, 35, 40 kids who are coming into town, Chad.
Okay. But
there just wasn't a big group of them that felt like were huge targets that Texas would need to, watch out, guys.
Out.
The Aggies have this guy on campus, and
we need a guy to pay that one. Right, a bunch of guys where you'd pay attention to see, like, do we hear about a commitment? If there's an offer that's been made, do you hear about a commitment this weekend? Like that kind of stuff.
Well, look, so there's really four guys, right? KJ Edwards is, I think, the most interesting guy because he's viewed as maybe the best running back in the state of Texas. He's viewed as a guy that's a heavy Texas lean. He goes to Texas A&M this weekend. I don't get the sense that anybody's like, cross your fingers, and I think that stands out, that there's strangely not more of a sense of threat maybe amongst both of these schools for their key targets. Boobie Feaster is in College Station today, will be in Austin tomorrow, the 5-star wide receiver, but LSU leads for him. And it's kind of thought that LSU and A&M are the top two. And because Texas hasn't been putting the big push on really anybody, I think there's also a sense of how important is he in the Texas hierarchy at the wide receiver position. But It's not a quintessential Texas A&M battle. It's certainly not that way with Zayden Crimpin, the offensive lineman from Prosper. And then you look at a guy like Bryce Perry-Wright, who is a national defensive end prospect that both schools are recruiting. I mean, that kid's from Georgia. So just the more this cycle goes on, it's fascinating to me that we're 1 year into this. Texas being in the SEC and thus Texas and Texas A&M being bedfellows in the same conference all over again. And it, what would that mean for recruiting off the field? And I think for all of the fuss that was made about Texas and Texas A&M and rekindling the rivalry, and it's happened in all of the sports, and we're anticipating baseball, all of that. On the football side of things, these two teams are not crossing each other's paths in recruiting nearly as much and not nearly in the same fashion that I think a lot of people thought they would, probably even myself, when we knew that Texas was going to be in the SEC. What would that look like? Chad, I think part of it is these two schools, there's two big components. The biggest is both of these schools recruit nationally to such a large degree that it's not the hand-to-hand combat in-state that traditionalists would remember, where, man, if there's a top 25 or top 50 kid in the state, Texas and Texas A&M will duke it out, and maybe Oklahoma gets in, or maybe LSU. It's not like that anymore. I mean, you can look at the Texas A&M visit list, and they're coming from everywhere: California, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida. There's as many out-of-state guys coming in as there are Texas guys. And the numbers being what the numbers are, there's if you took it collectively, all of the players that A&M is bringing in for this big recruiting weekend, roughly 20% are guys that Texas is hot to trot after as well. And just because they're hot to trot for 20% of the guys that A&M will be bringing in, that doesn't mean we're talking about a classic Texas A&M battle. That just means they're recruiting the same guys and targeting the same guys. But beyond that, you can look at the A&M list this weekend, and most of the guys Texas really isn't messing with. And of the guys that Texas is bringing in, if you're Texas A&M, there's not a lot of guys that you probably look at and go, that turns out that's one of our key guys. So it's interesting to me that as they finish the first full year of Texas in the SEC, and as we head into year two of Texas and A&M being back together again in football, this isn't exactly Hagler-Hearns on the recruiting side of things. In fact, it sure feels like Texas and Georgia and Texas and Ohio State and Texas and Oregon are the team, and maybe even Oklahoma to a smidge, but it feels like for Tech, but even with A&M, it feels like their main combatants these days are these out-of-state programs and the states they try to go into to raid.
We're going to continue this discussion, obviously. If you want to throw a super chat in. Before we continue, Drew has a wonderful reminder for everybody. Don't forget the half off of the OB annual subscription. Drew, that is a tremendous reminder. We have a tremendous graphic to throw up. It's got the mascot twice. It's so nice. The mascot's in there twice. 50% off your first year of OB, and your promo code is UT Spring 25. And as you see there, offers valid through Sunday. Guys,
dude, I'm telling you, man, the content is slamming today. Just today, in the last 24 hours, the War Room, Truth and Lies, the weekend preview, the review of the entire week. We've got Portal Combat is back, but on the basketball side of things. Baseball preview from Zach, who, oh, by the way, if you haven't been paying attention, does a once-a-week show with none other than Jim Schlossnagle himself. So, which you can watch right here on Orange Bloods Live every single Monday here during the baseball season. It's just nonstop. You're getting 50% off the year. Go check it out. Trust me. I don't think you guys will regret it. That isn't even getting into the message board, which is fantastic. So, yeah, man, I think we haven't made enough out of this offer. People jump on it now. Scan that QR code.
Yep. Get it done. Don't procrastinate. Get it done right now. We certainly appreciate it. Thank you all for mentioning that in the chat. So, Drew, thank you for that. Also, Chris Bennett, thank you for mentioning it. Yes, Chad calls me the king of Aggie sadness. That's true. Chris Bennett is so aware of everything. I believe he's a supercomputer, not an actual human being. And I believe that supercomputer is powered by Aggie tears. And by the way, Chris, here's a little fuel for you, because our man Sandman wants to remind everybody that 77-37 is the overall football record. It's true, Sandman. It finally changed, and the Aggies are going to have to win 40 in a row to tie the football series. That is an absolute fact. So, Catch, as you're talking about the way this is playing out right now, let me ask you a question about kind of the SEC and regionality, because the discussion when the Aggies got in the SEC was, oh my God, they're going to allow everybody into Texas. There was this discussion about it. Oh Lord, Les Miles has an office in Houston now, and now the SEC can get their claws into the state. Now Texas is obviously in the conference as well. How much of what we're seeing here can be attributed to kind of that because both of these schools are now in the SEC and the other powers are in Texas a little bit more? Is that a factor in this thing for you, or is it something else?
I think the changing dynamics that obviously include NIL, it's a big part of it. So what you have now is a landscape where you can take unlimited official visits. So even the concept of having a top 5 is kind of gone the way of the dodo bird. There's so many factors in play, and I think the least of which isn't, I think the current climate, not just in Texas, but across the map, you just have the romantic nature of, hey man, stay close to home, state pride, that kind of stuff. Like people don't feel that as much as they used to. And I think young people watching this would go, yeah, no, I get it. I'm not exactly flying the state of Texas flag up on the weekends. And I think older people would probably want to react into what the hell's going on with the young people today. But, I think these kids have not grown up necessarily with the agenda of my dream is to stay at home and go to either Texas or Texas A&M. But I think you see that across the entire country. And I think it's one of the reasons why you've seen Texas and Texas A&M so aggressively go out of state. It's not a massive thing anymore to go into Louisiana or Mississippi or Alabama and Georgia and pull a 4 or a super blue chip level prospect, 5-star out of any of those states. Things have changed. Guys are more willing, I think, to leave states. And it helps explain why neither Texas and Texas A&M are truly dominating in state. I think both schools are doing well. I think Texas is doing better than Texas A&M, but Texas could do better. I think it is a constant source of discussion of how do you get better? How can you cheat the margins or gain in margins in state in recruiting, where if you combine that with what you're doing out of state, man, you're really cooking with grease. I think that's what they're still trying to figure out. It's been tougher sledding than I think you would have imagined if you were thinking about this 10 years ago. Everything has changed. Very little is still the same.
Because we know when these coaches have press conferences about the signing class or talk recruiting in general, they always start with the state. They always do. It's the first thing you're supposed to say about we've got to be badass in the state of Texas, and then we go on. Let me ask it this way from Texas's perspective. Do you think Texas can continue to have the number 1 class in America if the Aggies beat them in state? Can that still continue to happen? Like, are we in that different an era where you'd say, man, the Aggies did better than the Longhorns in Texas, but Texas still has the number 1 class?
I mean, sir, it's not impossible.
Okay.
The question is, are you getting Arch Mannings and Ryan Wingos and Justice Terry's? I mean, that it requires incredibly elite out-of-state recruiting, but CJ backs. You know what I mean? Like that's what Texas has done. If they continue to recruit it. Just saying that A&M beat Texas in-state in recruiting, the implications there aren't strong enough. That doesn't necessarily have to mean that Texas didn't have success. Right. Might mean that A&M had a lot of success and thus, but maybe didn't recruit as well out of state as Texas did, and thus the totality of it. But I mean, it gets to be harder to do, but it's not an impossibility. But it certainly, like I said, it puts you in a position where in order to do so, you're certainly performing out of state at levels you're not in state.
All right. So, Ketch, you were throwing out some names earlier. You mentioned KJ Edwards, running back out of Carthage, that is he's at A&M this weekend. He's going to visit A&M.
Yeah, I think the four big names you've got from the 2026 class. So guys that they're recruiting right now for what they're doing in the next signing class. Running back KJ Edwards, probably the top running back, along with Ezekiel Crowell, who's a national back who's in town this weekend. But KJ Edwards will be back in Austin very soon. Booby Feaster, the wide receiver out of DeSoto, 5 stars, reclassified from 27 to 26. He's at A&M today. He'll be at Texas tomorrow. Zayden Krempen is an offensive lineman out of Prosper. He's not quite at the level of those other two guys in terms of national prestige as a prospect, but he would be a guy that I think both schools would love to have in their class. And then you've got Bryce Perry Wright, a defensive end out of Buford, Georgia, who Jason Sukamel rates at Texas handicaps their chances with him really highly. Well, this is A&M's chance to put a dent in that armor. If Texas is in really good shape, that suddenly may be as important as anything we watch this weekend. That's kind of it. But again, I don't think any of those necessarily feel like looming Texas A&M battles in 2 months or 3 months when decisions start to be made. It doesn't quite feel like that at all with really any of those guys.
So, Ketch, I want you to dig into one of these because you know how much I'm into a cool name. And if there's anybody on earth that wants one of the House Divided teams to get Booby Feaster, it's this guy. So give me an update on Booby and why it's if it's going to be anybody now, it's what LSU is the favorite for Booby as we're talking.
I mean, that's the sense. I mean, right now, if we were in Vegas and and it was even money on the bets, like that's the only bet to make. If you gave me some odds, this visit for Booby Feaster at Texas A&M really matters. I think there's a sense of, are they going to? Can they change? A&M's had some wide receiver commitments. The sense was that this was an A&M LSU 1-2 battle and that Texas had kind of drifted away. Mm-hmm. So can A&M close the gap on LSU? Can Texas then the next day do the exact same thing? I think it kind of remains to be seen. Like, I think they're interesting to watch, but it feels like Texas has a lot of work to do. And so I think that particular recruitment, that's how we'll watch that.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, it's just crazy that we're sitting here at the end of March. Both of them are about to have big weekends of visitors. And you're telling me there's like 4 guys that
now,
they're
look,
both.
That's not quite the dynamic. That's at Texas A&M. Texas will have its own group of players that come in this weekend. But a lot of them are out-of-state guys. They've got guys like A&M. You start going through the out-of-state guys, and it's a whole lot of, well, that's not necessarily one of our guys. That's where we're not crossing paths. So, look, if we look at the in-state guys, I mean, there's just not really – I don't know that Texas really has anybody from the 2026 class – that they're coming in this weekend other than Feaster, that Texas A&M will worry about on the Texas side. And again, we went over the list of guys that there's just not the crossover. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. Both of these schools have big recruiting weekends. Only one of those guys is going to both schools. And even then, neither of those schools is considered the favorite with Feaster. So it's just it's a unique situation for I think both of these schools to be in. They've gone so national that really the hand-to-hand fisticuffs between these two schools is a bit overrated based on the way someone like me would have framed what we thought this would look like.
So as I just peek back at the 25 team rankings, the way it finished, Texas, of course, was number 1. A&M finished 10th. Based on what you're seeing, would you tell either one to change what they're doing? Like, is either one missing an opportunity as you see it, or do you feel like both of them are kind of adjusting to 2025, college football recruiting?
I don't know what I could tell Texas A&M other than to keep spending money and to win some games. Texas and Texas A&M are different programs right now.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably, my approach to recruiting might be slightly different than Steve Sarkisian's if I were in charge of things, but I'm not. And he's a guy that, at this point, we're talking about a guy that just landed the number 1 recruiting class in the country.
Yeah.
And they don't feel behind the scenes at Texas less than 2 months after putting the finishing touches on 2025 that they need to do much. They feel like, hey, what we did very recently worked. I don't think they feel like most of the schools around the country have adjusted to what they're doing. And I think they look around and they like seeing LSU do what they're doing. What I think they wouldn't want to, they were able to use all of the intel from all of the months really leading into the football season. And then they decided to make some decisions with regards to what they wanted to do in NIL. They took all of that information in. And I don't think they felt like that hurt them very much. I don't think they feel like ultimately it was money that cost them DeCorian Moore. It wasn't money that cost them Michael Fasusi. Those kids wanted to go someplace else. Like, ultimately, that's for those two what that was about. Kind of the same thing with Riley Pettijohn. He wanted to go to Ohio State over Texas. But they were still able to make a play for Fasusi, and they were in it until the end. And if the dynamics had been different, they probably get him. But they are what they are. Some of those dynamics will probably help them this year. Eventually, when Jalen Lott makes a final decision, the fact that both of his parents were athletes at Texas and he's grown up in this program his entire life, that will probably have a big impact in a Texas-Oregon battle when push comes to eventual shove. But no, I don't know what I would tell A&M that a 5-year-old couldn't tell Mike Elko. Same thing you tell Brent Venables. Hey, man, we can try to spend all the money in the world, but at some point you have to win because other people have a lot of money too now. We're not – I think the thing that A&M might be struggling with right now, they're not viewed as elite. And, I think Jimbo Fisher was getting benefit of the doubt that Elko's just not going to get.
Fair, yes.
So they're on a lot of top 5 lists, and look, they're going to get guys because they'll spend the money. But – Texas used to be like this too, especially with out-of-state guys. It's one thing to make a top 5. It's one thing to get an official visit. It's another thing to finish as that kid's number 1. And when you're recruiting elite of the elite guys, and it's Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, schools at Alabama, schools that have been consistently in the playoffs and competing for national championships, when they have those options and the money is equal, how do you win that battle? And one of the things that Texas A&M is going to have to do that before, I think they're not going to repeat what happened in 2022, right? Wasn't that the year? 2021?
2022 was the big class.
The big class. Like, they're not going to repeat that again. In part because A&M is simply – remember how Jimbo acted? Hey, there's a lot of talk that kids were coming here for money. How dare you?
Oh, man. They
came here for the love of the Aggies. Well, they didn't leave for the love of the Aggies.
The reaction to the Saban stuff, yeah.
Is now that feels so ancient. But now the allegations back then was at A&M. Nobody has proof of this, but the allegations were that A&M was out there throwing around crypto money and paying these kids close to $1 million, and nobody else was. All of that was dirty money. Those kids couldn't talk about that. They kind of had to hide it a little bit. These kids are making that money now, and it's on the up and up, and it's very transparent. And so the advantage that A&M had as recent as 2022, like that went the way of the dodo bird. Everybody's got money. And now everybody's got more money. So if somebody were to say, remember just a couple of years ago with Micah Hudson, everybody kind of acted a little shocked at the notion that, wait a minute, Texas Tech's going to have as much money to offer as Texas? Really? Is that how that could go? In 2026, I think or 2025, 2026, I think everybody realizes, or those that follow recruiting close enough to have a strong opinion about something realize, oh, hey man, Tech's got that settlement money. It's got to be spent somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you were to even hear Baylor got a 5-star this year, I think everybody would go, okay, well, they got money too. They got millions too. And that just changes everything in a way where the traditional verbiage that we would use of Texas and Texas A&M and Oklahoma, and there's a battle in Houston between these two schools, and there's a battle in the Metroplex between these two schools and the other ones. It's just the old rules are being broken in front of our very eyes. And I don't even know that what we're watching is the beginning of a trend, an anomaly. We're going to need a larger sample size to realize what it is that we're actually watching. But it's so much more of a total free-for-all across the nation in the age of NIL. And I also think in this age of young people who aren't controlled by state lines the way you and I would have been when we were in high school. Back in the day, it would have felt like leaving the state of Texas was a thing.
Yeah.
These kids today, man, are taking visits every weekend all over the country.
I was going to say, by the time they get to the point of thinking about where do I want to be, they've already taken – the big dogs have taken like 10 trips out of state for visits.
And one of the kids that I mentioned that it will be at A&M this weekend, the Krempin kid, the offensive lineman from Prosper, that kid in the last few weeks has been to Tennessee. He's been to Ohio State. He's been to Michigan. He's done a freaking world tour.
You're telling me he's a lineman from Prosper that ain't scared to cross the state line? He's okay with that?
That kid could be a drug mule for all we know. He's done so much traveling. It's like you'd never suspect it, but boy, he sure has been up and down the interstate a bunch. No, he's been everywhere. And so when he goes to A&M, it's one of, he hasn't even started his official visits yet. This is just one of about a half dozen or more unofficial visits he's taken in the last couple of months. So you'll have to forgive Texas fans if when Krempin goes to A&M, it's like, look, kids, Big Ben, Parliament.
Yeah.
That kid's on another campus. And so, and I think it's really interesting that Texas has looked at the first 2 months of recruiting. This is the last weekend in April. The dead period has been over for a month. And Texas has essentially been, we're good.
Yeah.
A&M and OU have had recruiting events, it feels like every weekend.
Yeah.
And Texas is like, we just don't have time. I tell you what, go to LSU and A&M. And even on this group of visits, let me read you the list. This is the list that Sukamel featured in the War Room, okay?
Mm-hmm. This is the ones coming in Austin.
Because I think you'll notice a trend here, okay?
Okay.
This is, you've got Richard Wesley, defensive end, Chatsworth, California. Mm-hmm. Linebacker, Taven Epps, Tustin, California. Boobie Feaster, who we mentioned, right, comes out of DeSoto. Then you've got Grant Holland, wide receiver, Milton, Georgia, 2027 guy. There's a few in-state 2027 guys. There's Caden Protho, tight end, Bowden, Georgia. Mark Bowman, Mater Dei, tight end, California.
Yep.
Those are the big visits. And of the 2026 guys, the only in-state guy is Boobie Feaster. And that's a guy that hasn't visited Texas once yet this year. So they're finally getting him on campus. And I think he's visited LSU a couple times. I think this visit to A&M will have been, and I think Texas is like, man, this stuff at the beginning of the year is stupid because official visits matter. But then nothing really matters quite like when push comes to shove with NIL. That there's not a kid that we can't get back in the door with the right NIL offer. So how about we slow down and we don't panic? That's kind of been the Texas approach. And, you know, they're just not overreacting and panicking to anything that they're viewing. I think there would be guys this weekend that would want to commit. And I think Texas was, whoa. Take your official visits, actually. Take them. How about we don't take your commitment? You take a couple of more months to take trips and visit. And if we get to July and you still we're still the pick, we'll take your commitment. But the last thing Texas wants to do is take a commitment from a guy who wants to take a bunch of visits. Hey, I want to commit to Texas. Cool. What are your thoughts on official visits? I still want to take 6.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, here's what we don't want to do if it's Steve Sarkisian. We don't want to play defense. There's no advantage for us to have you committed and taking visits because everybody's going to use us as a pinata. So Sark really has been – they got 3 commitments in the class of 2026 right now, and I think that's probably too many. I think outside of Diabell, I think they'd be cool if they had 1 and just started worrying about commitments later because they don't want to have to play defense. And the moment you start getting commitments is the moment that by default you are suddenly playing defense on the recruiting trail. You know, it reminds me of, remember when DeCorian Moore committed to LSU in the summer before his junior year?
Yeah,
nobody at Texas panicked.
Yeah, a lot of time.
They were like, in a way, they were like, kind of thank God he didn't pick Texas. Remember when they said that and I reported that and we all kind of scoffed at like, sure, they wouldn't want a commitment from.
Right. Sure, you're happy.
Yeah. But it really is a disadvantage at times to be the school that has such an early commitment because then you're just the target for other schools. And Texas has got such a slow approach. They've got such a, we're going to take our time and not rush through any of this because they really feel like, you know, remember that kind of that old story. I don't remember who started it, but it's the old bull and the young bull on top of the hill, looking at all the hills, the bulls at the bottom of the hill. And they eventually decide to walk instead of run. It's the same thought. It really is. We don't want to rush through what patience will bring. Just it will bring more for us. And at this point, I think that's kind of been their approach, and they're not shaking off of that.
If y'all want to throw a super chat in, it'll go right to the top of the list. We do have a couple of good chats that we may get to, rolling up on 500 of you in that Specs chat. We got buy or sell coming up a little bit later. Also want to thank our great partners like the good folks out at Hayes City Store. There's Catch's new favorite picture in the world. Not just the night shot at Hayes City.
It makes me feel like such a creeper. Like
not just the lights in the tree, but there's a particular person in this picture that Catch is a fan of. We will let you guess if you have not figured that out. Let me go ahead and throw a QR code up kind of in that area to help.
Hey, that person's no longer on screen.
That is true. Hayes City Store, as you look at this great environment, this was when we went out and saw LC Rocks. They do live. There's live shows out there from time to time. You can follow them on Facebook at Hayes City Store TX, and they'll keep you up to date on all that. But just think of these words when you go out there. Home run dip. Opening day has happened. Baseball's going on. Texas baseball obviously is killing it. Home run dip. You get the queso, you get the salsa, you get the guacamole, and you get a bean dip that will change your brain. I promise you. Even if you didn't grow up like me, a little bit country, where bean dip was a delicacy, it's the bean dip that all bean dip dreams to be out at Hayes City Store. It's part of the home run dip. The chips are maybe the best I've ever had as well. Start there. Get anything else you want on that menu. You're not going to be disappointed. But trust me on the home run dip. It's incredible. Hayes City Store out in Driftwood. Go check them out.
What
and
did you say that it was the bean dip that all other bean dips wish they could be? Like, what? Say that again.
Is true. That is true. Every 4th of July, I had the delicacy of bean dip. Someone would go to the convenience store and get the little can of bean dip, and we'd have Fritos or whatever it was in the bean dip. That can of bean dip, Catch, dreams to be the bean dip at Hayes City Store. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
It's 5-star.
Because I don't like bean dip. So to hear you talk about a bean dip like that.
Dude, I'm telling you. It's incredible. And
does it stop tasting like beans? Does it taste like sex or something? Like, what's happening in this bean dip?
Well, it obviously depends on what kind of beans and what kind of sex you're having. But it tastes fantastic. Now, I'll admit, am I a fan of beans? Yes. Yes. I am a fan of beans. So, I mean, bean dip. But it's gourmet, 5-star, threatening to be 6-star bean dip. That's what it is. That's what I'm telling you. It's incredible.
I don't know if you meant to say what you said, but man, upon further reflection, that was funny.
Well, sometimes it just happens. Sometimes it's a little.
I feel like I need to work in how much, like a buy or sell. You enjoy bean dip sex.
Oh my God. All right. We do have a couple.
I give up. I will leave it alone.
Okay. We do have a couple of chats that I thought were interesting. First off, Money B, just giving you and the OB crowd crew some love. Catch, y'all been dropping more content than I can consume. Money B, appreciate the mention. I'm going to say it for the guys because I've been watching all this content hit orangebloods.com. One way you can tell whether or not it is great content happening, one, the guys will recognize it because they're hard on themselves. But that OB message board, Catch, back me up here, fairly realistic group. They don't just throw around compliments just to do it most of the time. But they've been throwing compliments out on this. So y'all need to know that. Catch, I like this one from Jake. Let's talk about a couple of the other big dogs. It says, I'd worry about recruiting if Georgia or Ohio State, obviously is what he means there, was reeling them in. Seems like the big dogs are playing it slower. You were just talking about Texas doing it. Is that what you're also seeing from the Georgia and Ohio State? Maybe we throw in Bamas of the world. Are they holding back a little bit too, like Texas is?
Well, yeah. I mean, because the big dogs recruit the big dogs, and the big dogs haven't really started making decisions. Okay. And I'm telling you, most of the final decisions are going to be made late the summer at the earliest. And even then, there's just this sense that, look, what's going to happen is these guys are going to freaking change their minds once final offers start coming in. I mean, and if that's the case, again, then March just doesn't matter.
Yeah. Jake, we appreciate it. Thank you for that chat. This one, Catch, we were talking about Texas and A&M and kind of obviously the recruiting strategies, if you will. Vivek had a couple of interesting comments and questions. Is A&M able to outspend Texas at this point? You mentioned the Aggies, and you said spend money and win games. Obviously, is going to be a big part of it. In any given moment, is this a reality or not?
It can happen because, A&M, I think any school can almost decide that we're not going to get beat on a kid for money. I mean, you can't. There's no like we bid infinity, and then I've seen like it's funny back in the old days of like eBay. I would watch people I know bid stuff up because they knew that someone had a high bid that wasn't going to get hit. So it was like, well, screw that guy. And I mean, they're not doing that. I think we're at a point now with NIL where if A&M or Texas beats a guy, let's say Booby Feaster, okay? Let's say A&M decides to spend $2.25 million a year on Booby Feaster. I think there would be partly a response from Texas is like, cool, because that takes a chunk out of the money. So, you know what? If they want to spend 2.3 on Booby Feaster and be able to wave a flag and say, we beat Texas for that guy, okay, we'll save it. We'll use that whatever, you know what I mean? Maybe there's a better way to invest that money. So I think none of us are trained really in the modern era to, I think, know how to digest all of this as it's happening in real time. Because I think we're watching this in college basketball. Here's what I think in college basketball, NIL-wise. There's going to be a few outliers, the Kansases and, I don't know, the Kentuckys of the world. Maybe they're breaking $10 million a year in money being spent in basketball. But I think the majority of the programs, let's say in the SEC, I think A&M and Texas and Auburn and Tennessee and probably like the majority of the teams, I think they're all going to live in the somewhere between 4 and 6. So I think you're going to know that other teams have money too. So I think your biggest reaction is probably finding out another school you're competing against spent a lot of money on somebody you're not after. That sounds awesome. So, if you hear that A&M spent a bunch of money on a quarterback, but it's not the quarterback that you're targeting, then you're like, nice,
Right.
And I think that it's just such a different way of viewing recruiting. I think one of the things I think we started to see it a little bit last year at tackle. In August, there was not a sense inside the Texas football program that Michael Fasusi was as important as anybody that Texas was recruiting. I think there was a sense that, well, John Turntine's in the next class. Fasusi might come in, and if Cam Williams doesn't play you got to go back to August. Nobody absolutely was certain that Cam Williams was going to be a one-and-done guy. But you felt like Banks was going to go. But everybody, even Lamont Rogers was coming to practices last year and going, Trevor Goosby's good. I noticed that guy.
Yep.
So I think there was a thought of, well, God, are we going to spend $1.something million on Fasusi with Turntine the next year, and maybe we don't need an actual tackle on the field until 2026. And then very quickly it was like, oh, crap, we need Fasusi. We need Fasusi because we're losing Cam. We don't really know about Brandon Baker. And you know what? Yep, we could actually use a tackle potentially to come in right away and play. It changed in just a couple of months who they thought was important, how much money they were willing to really invest at that position and on that player. So the other thing is, I think you might not know just how badly you need something until you see your team play in at least early months of August during the season, and you're 4 or 5 months away, and you figure out we've had an injury. This guy's entered the portal. The dynamics changed to such a degree that I really think you can recruit the basics. You need a quarterback and a running back, and you're going to take at least a couple of receivers. You'll take as many tight ends. You're going to take 4 or 5 offensive linemen. So you don't worry about the numbers a ton at this stage at the very beginning. But when it comes down to specifics and what are the biggest needs we have, sometimes those, at least in very recent experience, as recent as just a couple of months ago with Texas, we know that the urgency around tackle, and one of the reasons why Felix Ojo is now viewed as the most important guy in the 2026 recruiting class, is because of the dynamics that really kind of unfolded from the previous 6 months.
Thank y'all for the chats. We got a couple more that we will get to, and up over 520 of you in the Specs chat. Let's give Specs a little love, get all stocked up, Sweet 16, baseball, and everything else going on. Here's Lisa.
As a Texas family-owned business, we know you don't mess with Texas. And you won't find more ways to raise a glass of Texas-made cheer than right here. So whatever you're planning, we're ready to get you ready. Because at Specs, the fun's.
By the way, Catch, I noticed looking at the basketball schedule. First off, Chris Beard is first up tonight. Him going up against Tom Izzo, first game out of the block. Ole Miss has men and women in the Sweet 16 tonight. The men are a 6 seed, the women are a 5 seed, both trying to get to the Elite 8. So interesting there.
I looked. Can I give you a quick Directors Cup update?
Sure.
What instinctively, what do you think's happening? Like if I were to tell you they have updated projections,
I'd say Texas is probably top 3 in those projections.
This was posted just a couple of days ago. This was changed after the recent rankings. So these things are adjusted, like what you're projected to do in some sports is based on your current ranking. So the Texas points have gone up because they've gone from 10th. Like there's a range of points, and apparently the range takes in the variances of, for instance, Texas baseball is ranked 3rd in one poll and 7th in another. Okay. So
right.
To finish 3rd versus finishing 7th would give you a different amount of points later in the season. One would be a semifinalist. The other would, I guess, just make the College World Series. You with me? Mm-hmm. So Stanford currently projected right now 1,298 points, 0.5. Very specific, but
very
that's
specific.
where they're currently projected.
Mm-hmm.
Texas is 1,290.25 to 1,300. So their range is just below and just above where Stanford is projected.
Okay.
North Carolina is at 1,268.75 to 1,286.75. And USC is at 1,276.75. There are 4 schools projected to finish within 20 points of each other and maybe less than that by the time we get to the end of the year. So I bring all of that up just to say I woke up today and was like, hey, I forgot, how did the Texas women finish in swimming? Because the Texas men probably going to win a national championship. And it's like, where's Stanford on the list? But now for the rest of the year, in every single sport, you need to ask, where are North Carolina? What is USC? What are they doing? And now I'm looking at the Juju Watkins injury, and it's kind of impossible to wonder, did that injury, will it, when we look back on this, will we say that the Juju Watkins injury helped determine the final outcome of the Directors Cup? Kind of wild that it's a 4-way battle royal right now between, you've got 2 Big Ten. No, you've got 2 ACCs, a Big Ten, and a SEC school all in the top 4, all within 20 points of each other, all with different dynamics with regards to how many programs they have. And, Stanford is Stanford, but, USC and North Carolina have their own vibes as well. Anyway, I found that interesting.
Yeah. I didn't realize North Carolina's women were that good this year. 3 seed in the tournament. That's the first game out today, men or women, is North Carolina and Duke for a trip to the Elite 8.
The rest of the year, you got to be anti-Stanford, North Carolina, and anti-USC.
Yeah, there you go. Sweet 16 continuing tonight. We did have a couple other chats I wanted you to catch real quick. Sailor Joe wants to know, how likely is it that we land both Ojo and Turntine? The question every Texas fan deep down wants to know.
It's not impossible. Look, Ojo is the most important target on the board. They've quite frankly told Ojo that, and he said it out loud, and that genie can't be put back into the bottle.
Yep. And to be fair, when you look at certain, to use the Rivals rankings as an example, they agree too, just by that much. Yeah.
And we know that Flood will always prioritize large humans. And right now, Ojo's a larger human than Turntine. I mean, if the tie goes to the large human. Now, if Turntine's okay with anything other than left tackle, then I think the chances are pretty good. I think one of the things that hurts in the pursuit of Ojo, Turntine, and Crimpin, the kid who's visiting A&M this weekend, is I think they all probably fancy themselves and are being told by other schools that, hey, left tackle, come be our guy. And Texas can't tell all of those guys that with a straight face. You can say you can come in and compete, but, John Turntine, part of the attraction and ultimately one of the reasons why he would pick Texas would be you're our guy, and Trevor Gooseby's out the door, let's say, and it's possible that Trevor Gooseby will be so good this year that he also is a one-and-done guy. You could roll right in next January and essentially be LT1 on our depth chart. And that's, they won't tell anybody. They won't tell Turntine quite the same thing. Other schools will. Plus, other schools may put more money in the Turntine fund than Texas will because they'd be, so there's, again, how we talk about recruitments in 2026 is so much more like the way we would talk about an NFL team dealing with its salary cap, because it's a lot more so than can we let that guy go to the Eagles? The conversation is, what does this do to our cap? What does this leave us for other positions? The conversations are just so much more nuanced. I'm not going to say the thing that I know you guys are thinking I'm going to say. I'm not going to say it. I'm thinking it, though.
Okay.
It's the reason when I do say that thing that you think I'm going to say, it's the reason why I think it.
All right, Catch, we need to head towards buy or sell here. Real quick before we do, to kind of wrap up the discussion. We've been talking recruiting and Texas A&M. Vivek threw out a very simple, what do you
think I was hinting at that I wasn't going to say?
I'm not saying it. No, I'm not saying it.
Okay.
There's no way I know. I'm not saying it. What would you change, Catch, was Vivek's comment earlier. So, and you kind of discussed it a little bit, but from the Texas perspective, and you talked about you might do it slightly differently than Sark. Is there one example you could give us?
Yes. I think the most obvious one is I think I would have had a little bit more activity in January and March on the home front than Texas has. But those Sark, Sark's, I don't think will ever get asked that question because that's too wonky of a question for most of the mainstream media to throw out. But I think that I know that in year one, they were just over. They felt like there were too many events. There were too many people coming on too many weekends, and they were really worried that they were going to burn out. And with all of the weekends coming up, I think, there's just a good chance that they may say, we have to save our energy. We coached deep into the season. We did that for self-preservation, and I get that. But if it were me, I think I would have done a little bit more in terms of events. That's just as an example. But again, they're looking at these things different than I am.
Yeah.
They are looking at this through the prism of our strategy includes late NIL offers. Like, I'm not changing a whole lot of big picture stuff. I think I like putting notches on the belt and having kids on campus, and they may feel like they're going to have these kids on campus enough. I might have done something that would have allowed me to get Booby Feaster on campus earlier than late March, when it kind of feels like his recruitment has taken form based on what you've allowed other people to do. But then again, Texas would say, man, there ain't nothing that's happened with Booby Feaster that in August won't change if we decide to pay Booby Feaster more money in NIL than anybody else. Yeah. And they're probably right.
All right. Before we hit buy or sell, let's remind you, big thanks to Texas Card House and their sponsorship. Don't forget about Hijack Poker. Online poker is back in the great state of Texas. Got to be in Texas to enjoy it. Hijackpoker.com. Put that app on any device you want. Jeff Ketchum is playing all the time. You might be.
I'm not playing right now.
He's playing. I
just doubled up, Chad. I flopped a set of threes. A guy moved in on me with ace queen. He didn't even have a pair on the board. And sometimes you take those gifts.
There it is. Yep. I don't just say it. It's a real thing. He plays all the time, including when you're watching this show.
I lost $50 last night. I was not happy.
You can deposit and cash out at any of those Texas Card House locations. All right, Ketch, you want to go first or second?
Yesterday too.
Yeah, you want to go first or second for buy or sell today?
I'm going to go first today.
Okay.
But I only have 4 questions.
All right.
So the 5th one I may have to just make up on the fly.
Excellent.
Buy or sell number 1, Texas women make the Final Four. Write it in ink.
Ooh, yeah, go ahead. Grab some ink. Buy or we'll buy that. I do think if they get there and they face South Carolina, I think South Carolina is going to be a little too much for them. But Tennessee and then the winner, I think it's going to be close battles. But I'll trust Vic and the Junkyard Dogs to get it done.
Fair enough. Buy or sell number 2. You made it until the end of the Texas Tech Arkansas game last night.
Oh, yeah, buy. I watched it all. It was highly entertaining. It was the game I was least interested in because I can't stand either team, but good drama, quality ball, guys actually, valuing the mid-range. I was an old, crotchety basketball fan that was kind of enjoying it last night. And to the victor go the spoils, like you always say. That's a hell of a shot by Tech. And then obviously Arkansas, misses at the end. So, yes, I made it to the end. It was good stuff.
All right, buy or sell number 3. I did not.
Okay.
Woke up this morning, saw the highlights. Buy or sell number 3. Texas A&M will not get swept this weekend in college baseball.
Yeah, that's buy. That's capital B buy. It's not going to happen. 0-9? 0-9 is not happening. Not happening. Out on a limb.
Let's watch.
Out on a limb. Might lose a series, but won't get swept. Come on, Aggies. Don't make me sound like an idiot at the end of the weekend. Please.
Pretty please.
Pretty please.
He's asking nicely. Aggies, come on. God. Speaking of the Aggies, buy or sell number 4. If you could customize your garage like Xavier Worthy, you would dedicate the artwork to Texas A&M football or Texas A&M athletics instead of the Dallas Cowboys and other pro sport. It says starts, but that should say pro sports stars / heroes of yours.
Overall,
what's your theme?
Yeah, overall, I've got to sell it because I feel like if I went sports, it'd be multiple things. I don't think I would stick with one thing. A&M might be a part of it, but my pro teams would have to be in there as well. So I don't think it would just be wall-to-wall A&M. I'd mix it up a little bit. So I'll sell.
There's a part of me that thinks I'd just go full-on Liverpool.
Oh, I was going to say yours would just be red everywhere.
But the more universal, the better investment, I think, would be to go music. That could be the thing that if you sell your house, looks like a walk through like the Music Hall of Fame or something.
Right. And for you, I would definitely recommend that, knowing what you think about music and certain musicians. I mean, you've got paintings of musicians in your house now. I've
got 6 Liverpool paintings and 3 music paintings on my walls just in my office.
Yeah, I would tell you to go down the musical path, and good call, because you got a way better chance that next person that might move in cares about music like you did more than they cared about Liverpool soccer.
Because my concern, one of my concerns for Xavier is that he's going to love that. So he either has to live in that house forever or when he sells it, the realtor's going to tell him, we got to paint this. We have to change this. And he's going to be like, whoa, what do you mean? This is me. It's art. Yeah. And they're going to say, yeah, but like the next family, they're not going to want to see you. They're going to know they bought the house from you. Mm-hmm. That's going to be enough. They don't need a shrine to you he won't get it. Right. And I'm a little worried. I brought up the movie Brewster's Millions. I know Chris Bennett will know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Is very much Richard Pryor being forced to spend all of his money on his dream penthouse, only for at the moment that it was built and finished, they took it away from him. Damn it.
Yeah. Dude, it's so crazy. I remember when T.O. made the shirts that said, I love me some me. Xavier Worthy just one-upped him on that one. I don't know that I've ever seen a better example of just flat-out self-love than that. Xavier, be careful. Narcissism can get out of control, man. I wish I could tell you guys the wisecrack that I made about an hour and a half ago, but it is not suitable for YouTube. Nope, that was funny, though. That was good stuff. That was funny. That was funny.
Let's just say it involves some moans in the garage, but that's neither here nor there. And finally, buy or sell number 5. At least 3 of the 4 number 1 seeds in the men's tournament end up making the Final Four.
3 of the 4. See, I scoffed at the idea of all.
3 of them are in the Elite 8, and only Houston is to go.
Right. Well, Auburn too.
Oh, Auburn. That's right. I'm sorry. You're right.
Yeah. 2 are in the Elite 8. 2 still have to go. And you're saying 3 of the 4 make the Final Four. I'm still going to sell. I'm going to sell and play the math here. I'm going to say 2 of them make the Final Four, but not 3.
Do you think there's a better chance that we get all – what's the better math? That chalk and all the favorites just run the table, or someone actually beats one of the favorites?
I'm going to say it's somebody actually beats one of the favorites. I understand Bama looked that great last night, but I'll still say there's a better chance one of them slips than all of them get there.
I moved up to 129th in the Orange Bloods bracket.
There you go.
What I need to happen now is I need Auburn to win because I got them in the national championship game.
Okay.
And then I have both Houston and Tennessee. So tonight I can make a move. Tonight, if the favorites win, I think I have a chance to be in the top 100. I'm number 1 overall in the women's bracket, damn it. That's what happens when you go 16 for 16 in the round of 32. How's them apples taste?
Man.
For the
and by the way,
people that were in that bracket challenge.
Yeah. By the way, Longhorn fans, you get a tour of former coaches to start tonight's play. Ole Miss and Michigan State starts, then Kentucky, Tennessee is the second game out of the gates, then the Auburn game, and then Purdue, Houston is the last one to tip.
Waka waka waka
tonight. Yes. All right.
Positive bear thing there, but
all right, Catch. So today in Buy or Sell, I'm presenting you with a hypothetical weekend of an all-time nature. So I want you to prepare for that. But I also need your help, and I'm also going to test your trivia ability.
I'm ready, man. I'm ready.
Here we go. Buy or sell number 1. You think Texas and Texas A&M will both miss on KJ Edwards?
Sell. Texas is going to get KJ Edwards.
Okay. Running back from Carthage. Texas says, Catch says it'll go to Texas. All right, Catch, here's the trivia part. Buy or sell number 2. NBA great Byron Scott is 64 years old today. You can tell me where he played college basketball.
Sell.
Man, I couldn't either. This is before you and me would have been around. How about Arizona State? Would not have known that. Crazy bit of trivia there. All right, Catch.
I need to give me 70 guesses, and I would have had to gone through all of the majors, and I don't know if I still would have said Arizona State.
I never saw him play a second in college. I didn't know it either. Catch, I need your help. Buy or sell number 3. I have not seen A Real Pain or a Nora. I assume you have seen both. You know which one I should watch if I'm only watching one.
You need to watch Honora. It is about it's got sex workers in it. Like, it's you. I think you would like both movies.
Okay.
But I think you'll walk away from Honora and it'll just be your vibe a little bit more. One is a movie of two brothers making like a road trip together. It's a road trip movie.
Yeah.
And the other one is like it's not a hooker with a heart of gold. It is not pretty. It is not Pretty Woman. It is not.
Okay.
It is not.
Right.
And it's because it's not Pretty Woman is precisely the reason why I would suggest Honora.
Fair enough. Do I get any Roxette songs in Honora?
You do not.
But you
don't in a real pain either. So
yeah, fair enough. Jesse Eisenberg's not jamming out to Roxette. Okay.
Sadly, no.
Good to know. All right, Catch. Here's your hypothetical weekend. It begins.
Hold on. You know what? I take that back. When they toured a Holocaust memorial site, they did play Roxette. Sorry about that. Sorry. That does happen in a real pain.
I just
forgot about that scene, Chad.
Fair enough. I'm glad I mentioned it then. I'm glad I asked. All right, Catch. We're starting with tonight and your hypothetical weekend. Buy or sell number 4, Reba McEntire and Lady Gaga share a birthday today. If both are in your town tonight and you're taking your wife and kids to the show, the Ketchums are going to see Gaga.
I mean, it has to be a buy.
Yeah?
Not that like my little kids are monsters or anything, but they know who Lady Gaga is.
Oh, and they don't know who Reba is. Probably not.
Now, look, the question is if Heather and I were going.
Yeah, this is everybody's got to go. Whole family.
Thing is, I only want to go see Reba if she sings my favorite Reba song. If it comes down to between those two, which has the song I love the most?
Well, we got to make it a man's game. They both do. They're both going to play exactly what you want.
I understand that, but I'm telling you, I'm only picking Reba, no matter the age. If she sings the song, I would not want to go see Reba live and not have her sing my favorite Reba song, and I don't think it's on the set list.
Interesting. Which is what? What's the favorite?
Well, you have to guess.
I have to guess. Okay. Well, then if you
random, you have to guess the random.
Yeah, it's got to be pretty random because if it's not a monster hit, like I've got the monster hits in my head. So what's the one you love that, like my wife's deep level Reba song is she thinks his name was John.
That is not a deep level. I mean, that's maybe her greatest song of all time outside of Fancy.
Yeah. Right. So that was like
outside of Fancy.
Like Fancy and New England and Does He
My
Love You?
My song is so much more obscure than that.
Those are the three I think of. So tell me what's your obscure one?
Mine is from the same album, Chad.
Mm-hmm.
She thinks his name was John is from the Read My Mind album. And I just wanted to check on the date of that release. I think that was like a 91 release. 1994.
Okay.
Till You Love Me is my all-time favorite Reba McEntire song.
All right.
Bad Breakup in 1995.
Uh-huh.
And I played that song on loop.
Okay. So she's guaranteed to play it. Do you love it enough you'd want to take your wife and kids to see it?
At that point, I would make my kids force them to go.
All right. So now you're selling. You're selling and you're going Reba McEntire.
If you give me the song.
I'm giving you the song. There you go. Happy 70, by the way, to Reba, and happy 39 to Lady Gaga. All right, Catch. So you get done with Reba. You get plenty of rest, and you're going to need it because your hypothetical weekend continues. Buy or sell number 5, Elle McPherson will be 61 years old tomorrow. If your wife gave you a gift tomorrow night, and it's one night with either Elle or Keira Knightley, and the one you don't pick will know about it and be disappointed because she really wanted you. You're going to go with L.
Wait, is it current?
It is current. There is a 21-year difference in these two women, if it matters. 61 for L, and I told you the other day, Kira just turned 40. You're going with Elle Macpherson.
I mean, God, good grief. What you're asking me, man.
Oh, I knew what I'm asking. Yeah, man's game. Here we go.
I mean, you're asking me if I would have sex with a 60-plus-year-old woman.
No, I'm not. I'm asking if
you
have sex
are. You know you are.
Not just anyone, though. Not anyone.
The thing is, my mom is in her 60s. Like,
No, I see. It's a very simple way to think about it.
The day my mom hits 70, maybe the 60s open up. But
it's a weird way to think about it.
I just fundamentally, it's not an issue of L versus or you've got me. I can't even say Kira's name.
Yeah.
I'm going to go Kira. I'm going to have sex with 40-year-old Kira Knightley, and I'm not going to have to ask myself any questions the next day about, am I in, it was just less than a week ago that my wife was like, you're into Asian women. And then I'm my optometrist. And what I don't want is like the next day, my wife to have given me a free pass and then been like, oh, so you're into granny sex, are you?
Oh, wow. Wow. Okay. There you go. I'm glad I presented it the way I did. I wanted to make it challenging.
Because Elle might be a grandmother.
And I figured.
I'm going to look it up.
Yeah, the right now. So there you go. Ketch and his weird hypothetical weekend. That's what he would do. He's going Reba and Kira on his hypothetical.
Okay, look. She's got a 26-year-old and a 21-year-old kid.
Okay.
That sounds like some grandma sex waiting to happen.
Oh, God. That's fantastic. I love how you're walking. I love listening to the walkthrough. That's why I came up with this one, because I knew there'd be a walk through the logic.
Now, does she have? Oh, God, yes. She's a grandmother. She has a grandson named Cy.
She's Elle Macpherson. Like, I mean,
60-something-year-old grandmother, Elle Macpherson. I'm not.
Okay.
Look, man. Look, no woman adorned my locker both in junior high and high school like Elle Macpherson did.
Yeah, I know. That's why she's in this discussion. I'm a little sad.
60-something-year-old grandmother right now. And you know what? I want to go to therapy the Tuesday after this rendezvous. I just want to talk and brag about it. I just want to be like, my wife is awesome. Sex was awesome. I got Kira smiled the whole weekend. It was awesome. That was everything I wanted it to be. What I don't want to do is tell my therapist, hey, I scratched an itch this weekend, no doubt about it. But I kind of like the granny sex. Like, do we need, like, what is that? I don't want to have to ask the questions. Am I into grand women all of a sudden?
Sad for all Elle Macpherson fans. That's all I can say. Before we wrap up, let's remind you again about the deal going on. 50% off your first year of Orange Bloods. You've wanted to, you've thought about it, you've dreamed about it, and now it's going to happen. Use the code UTSPRING25. Make sure you get it done by Sunday because the offer is valid through Sunday. Don't procrastinate. Just do it. Get it done. Ketch told you about the content earlier.
Hey, I got to go, Chad.
You don't have to take his word for it. Just get it done. All right. Orange Bloods, special offer. We got to roll. Ketch is gone again. I really thought we could maybe be able to get it done. He said he needed to be gone by 1, and yeah, it didn't happen. Ketch has got stuff to do. He's gone. You guys may have stuff to do as well. We appreciate y'all jumping in, though. We know there are other choices out there. We know there are other things you could be doing, and you chose to make us a part of your day. Thank you so much, whether you listen live or you're listening a little bit later on. Football with Friends at 6 tonight. Don't forget Monday morning with Jeff and Anwar. They hit you with the Overreaction Monday show at 9 a.m. every Monday. Y'all enjoy your weekend. Again, that 50% offer on your first year of OB, it rolls through Sunday. That is your QR code. Get signed up. Check out all that great content. Catch wasn't just blowing smoke. There's new content. There's new articles going up. All the guys throwing in different stuff. Go check that out. You could even hit the forum, the 40 Acres forum, and see a post I threw up about Texas's schedule this year and how it once again will be very favorable compared to some of the opponents, or some of the opponents in the SEC, but also some of their rivals, Texas and Oklahoma and A&M, a very different situation. A team like Arkansas, very different schedule put in front of them than Texas. Check that all out at orangebloods.com. Y'all have a great weekend, and we will talk to you on Monday. Enjoy all the basketball or whatever else you're enjoying this weekend. Good luck to that Texas baseball team going to Missouri, and to my Aggie baseball team. Just one. But not looking for a lot, okay? Just look at, hey, let's get a game, right? 27 outs away, baby steps, okay? Baby steps. Because guess what? I'm sitting here right now 4 weeks exactly, 28 days till the Aggies come to Austin to face Schloss and the Longhorns for the first time. Aggies, you might not want to be playing like this when that comes up, because somehow I don't think history is going to forget it if you do. Y'all have a great weekend. We'll talk to you on Monday. See